Hey everyone, thank you for watching. Today's video I'm excited to do. It's a bit of an impromptu video for me, but this new collection from Colourpop showed up at my door. This is the Love Struck collection. Inside you have 5 mini palettes here, and I know a lot of you, and myself included, were really excited about this collection. So today's video is going to be focused on this. I'm going to swatch everything. I have comparison swatches of all of the palettes, and I'm also going to be doing looks with multiple of these palettes and giving you my thoughts on them. And I have some things to say about this collection, so let's go ahead and get started. So first up, just to run through a little bit about this collection. So again, you have these 5 mini palettes here. These are going to retail for $10. They will be available the day that this video goes live, which is January 7th, and will be available on the Colourpop website. So I'm going to run through each palette individually, show some close-ups and some swatches, and then we will jump over into the comparison swatches because a lot of you asked me for comparisons, and jump into a few demos with these palettes, and I will end it with my thoughts because some of you might be surprised with what I have to say. First up with the Lyric palette. Again, these are all 5 pans. They have a variety of different finishes in each palette. So we have some mattes, some shimmers, some glitters, some of those mattes with the micro glitters in them. The Lyric one is definitely one that popped out at me because I love just creating a simple, easy, brown, smoky eye. So something like this, I was like, oh yes, like I would pay $10 for this palette. And then to run through the different shades, we have Melody, Ode, Unsung, Cello, and Verse. I do find it interesting that the shade in the middle, there is no asterisk next to it or on the packaging itself, but I do believe that there should be because to me this seems like a glitter. There is a glitter in another palette that does have the asterisk next to it, and they feel different. That one feels a little bit more glittery, but to me this one still seems very much like a glitter. So I'm a little bit confused by that. Even when I swatch it, I mean, glitter was flying everywhere. It was hard to remove. It was more than just like a really, really foiled shadow. So to me, in my mind, this one, I think it should be considered a glitter. Then we have some shimmers and some mattes in this one. Next up, we have Crush. So this one is kind of like your warm toned. You have some oranges in here. Again, we have mattes, we have some shimmers, and then we have that matte with the really fine micro glitters in this one. For the shades in here, we have Bow, Love, Arrow, Struck, and Cherub. And I thought it was interesting because Arrow, the center one here, does have the asterisk next to it. To me, this one really does feel like a foiled shadow. So I'm almost a little bit confused that this one has the asterisk, yet the glitter in the other palette doesn't. So just pointing out my casual observations to you. Next up, we have Ballad, which is the very cool toned, smoky. I was very excited about this palette. It's the one that I have on my eyes right now. To run through the shades in here, we have Novel, Epic, Drama, Fate, and Prose. There are none in here that have the asterisk, and I don't believe any of them should. So again, we have some shimmers, some mattes, and then we do have these two at the end are that matte with the microfine glitters to it. So I didn't realize how many of those palettes were going to have that formula, and it's not my absolute favorite. But next up, we have Amore. This was definitely one that caught my attention also. I love purples, I love mauves. So in this palette, we have Passion, Romeo, Affair, Woo, and Darling. We actually have 2 asterisks in here. We have the glitter, and this is the one that I was saying this really does feel like a glitter in this palette. And then also the very last shade in Darling, that one has the asterisk because this is more of like your pressed pigment, could potentially stain the eyes. I will have a look with this palette, but I really put it on and took it right back off, so I can't speak much to the staining at this time. And we have mattes, a glitter, shimmers, and the matte with the microfine glitters in this one. And then finally we have Cherish. This one is a little bit more on your red tone side. For the shades, we have Destiny, Adore, Faith, Precious, and Forever. And once again, the center shade Faith does have the asterisk next to it. Again, I'm a little bit surprised at that one because to me it just feels like a really foiled shadow, but you know, is what it is. But in here we have mattes, shimmers, and then the matte with the microfine glitter in this one. So those are all the palettes. Again, they are retailing for $10. I will have these linked in my description box down below. But that's each palette, and then let's go ahead and jump over into the comparisons and the demo. I am going to be switching to a voiceover for this. I don't do voiceovers all that often, so my apologies in advance if this isn't the best voiceover that you've ever heard. I'm also not a swatch queen, and doing comparison swatches is not something that I do very often. So I thank you in advance for your kindness on again, showing me support as I try something new with my videos, and I still hope that you find this segment helpful. Let's jump into those and then we'll finish off with my final thoughts. Starting the comparisons with the Lyric palette to the Tati Beauty textured neutrals. I had a lot of requests to compare most of these palettes to the Tati Beauty, so you're going to see a lot of those. This one is definitely very similar, from the glitter to the matte shades to the shimmers. A lot of similarities in this one. I also had a lot of requests to compare this to the Natasha Denona Mini Nude, which you can see is a favorite of mine. This is another one that's pretty similar. You're not going to get the pressed glitter in the Natasha palette, but a few pretty similar shades. Again, this is kind of, you know, your brown neutral palette, so there's probably going to be a lot of comparisons out there, but this is another one that I thought was pretty close. And then finally with the Grandeur palette from Colourpop, this one is really similar, and it's going to have 5 similar shades compared to the Tati was probably the next closest with those 4 similars, but this one is pretty similar, so if you have it, you might not need this one. Next up, comparisons to the Crush palette. I first compared it to the Tati Beauty textured neutrals, and you can see not a whole lot of really similar shades in here. You know, obviously same color story, but not a whole lot of exact dupes. Next up, I got asked to do some comparisons with the Big Poppy palette from Colourpop. Now, this is an all matte palette, so I just swatched some of the matte shades so you could get an idea of them. That first one is pretty similar, but other than that, not a whole lot of dupes in here once again, but you know, more on that orange color story side. And then lastly, I swatched it against the California Love, which is also from Colourpop. Pretty similar color story in this one. There's going to be some really similar shades. The second, third, fourth shades, all of those are pretty similar from the California Love. Next up, comparisons with the Ballad palette. So I am comparing it first to the Tati Beauty textured neutrals. I really thought this would be similar. When people started to say they're similar to Tati, I kind of thought of this one and that last row in the textured neutrals, but you can see there's really not a lot of similarities. There wasn't even a lot for me to swatch with this one. Another palette I was getting a lot of requests for, and one that popped into my mind immediately, was the Baroque palette. This is a newer one from Colourpop. I thought the color scheme was going to be really similar. Not too similar though, not even everything that I can do comparison swatches against. The last 2 are going to be the most similar from the palette. And then lastly, I swatched That's Taupe. This is a favorite of mine from Colourpop, so I was kind of going on the other end of what I swatched against Tati and what I swatched against the Baroque palette. So we're kind of focusing on the other end here, and you can see there are some similarities in there. It's just missing those 2 last shades from the Ballad palette. Next, comparing the Amore palette to the Tati Beauty textured neutrals. This was another one I was like, this row is going to be exactly the same. The glitter is very similar, but other than that, not a whole lot of exact shade matches here, but a similar color story. Next, comparing it to another new one from Colourpop. This is their Wine and Only palette. So once again, really similar color story with this one, and there are some that are pretty similar. Those last 2 shades are pretty close to one another in each of the palettes. And then lastly, I compared it to the Menage Muah, also a newer one from Colourpop, and this one was pretty similar. You can see that there's a lot of similarities in these palettes. So once again, if you have the Menage Muah, you might not absolutely need the Amore palette because they are pretty darn close to one another. Next, comparing the Cherish palette, I have the Ornate palette from Colourpop. Similar color story here. Actually, this was the hardest one for me to find dupes with in my collection. I don't have a lot of palettes with this particular color story, but this is it compared to the Ornate. And then I actually just did 2 palette comparisons for this one because, again, I don't have a lot of similar color stories, but I grabbed out the Cor de Rosa. This was a little bit more similar than I was expecting it to be. The second shade, pretty close to one another. The second to last shade, also pretty close, but not an exact dupe. Moving over to a look first using the shade Verse, and I'm just placing that on the outer part of my eye. Then coming in with Ode, taking a larger blending brush, and I'm just going to blend that back and forth along my crease. Just adding a little bit more and doing some more blending. I thought the mattes blended really smoothly. The mattes seem like the same Colourpop matte formula that I really enjoy. And then coming in with Cello, I am placing that all over my lid. I used a dry brush. I thought it popped really well. I thought it was really easy to place down. Didn't get a lot of fallout with this one. I was happy. Coming into the first shade Melody, I used that on my inner corner and it really popped. I was a little bit surprised at that. I used it for the brow bone, and then I mixed together the two mattes and I blended that out on my lower lash line, and I was happy with how this look came out. Moving to a look with the Amore palette, I am first taking the Darling shade and I'm going to pack that all over onto my lid. Then taking Passion on a blending brush, and I'm going to use that to really blend out the edges of that darker shadow. And because I wanted to give this formula a fair try, I used Romeo and packed that on top of the first shade. And you can see it just doesn't really translate like it does on the pan into the eyes. I just wanted to try a little bit of Woo, so I placed that onto my lower lash line. I thought this one was okay. Lastly, a look with the Ballad palette. Again, really wanted to give this formula a shot, so I'm first packing Fate all over the lid, using a bit of a blending brush too so I can blend that onto my crease. Just really taking the time to blend it. It was a little bit patchier, but sometimes it can be the color too, and I'm just not the best working with this formula. But then I used a little bit of Epic on a blending brush and just really tried to blend everything together and make it look a little bit less harsh. Then I came into the first shade in Novel, and I really packed that onto my inner corner and my brow bone to give it some pop. Then I mixed the last two shades for the lower lash line, and I liked the look. A little bit harder to get to, but I thought it was okay. Thoughts on this collection is I actually have some mixed feelings. I really enjoy Colourpop as a brand. I will say that they are truly one of my favorite brands. A lot of their releases catch my attention. I try so much from them. I have a ton of Colourpop videos. I have a whole Colourpop playlist if you want to check it out. So when they came out with these, my initial thought was I was super excited because I love 5 pans, I love mini palettes, and I like monochromatic palettes without being too monochromatic. So I liked that each of these had their own little color story going on without being just the exact same. And I have, like I said, I have some mixed feelings. So for the Lyric palette, this is really, it's one of my favorites. I really like this. I felt like the eye look I created was super simple to use. The pressed glitter, I'm not so much a huge fan of. I wish that would have been just like a really pretty foiled shimmer because I don't work with glitters all that often. I'm almost a little bit surprised that we see so many pressed glitters in these palettes. I'm glad not every single palette has one. But I'm almost a little bit surprised because I listened to a couple podcasts recently that have workers from Colourpop on there about how they have their own lab and whole production facility, and they can really make products very quickly and on demand, and they really listen to the feedback of consumers, which I have seen that definitely from Colourpop. And so they said, you know, people started really letting us know that they don't love the pressed glitter, so we decided to stop those. And I remember there was a while there where we weren't seeing a lot of pressed glitters in the Colourpop palettes. So for them to come back with this launch, I was almost a little bit surprised at that. But if you're someone who loves glitters, then that's fantastic. You're probably, you know, you have multiple palettes to choose from. Me, I just don't use it a lot. And then again, it's messy, it's harder to remove. You know, it's a whole thing. I do like the Lyric palette, and I thought it was easy to use. Another palette that I did like, but not like fully all the way, the Amore palette. So again, I love this color scheme. I love purple with green eyes. It's one of my favorites. Also, the second shade is that matte with the glitters in there, and these shades just do not translate on the eyes. They look so beautiful in the palettes, but they really don't translate on the eyes, and I wanted to give it a chance, and that's why you see me use it in the demo, and it's just like, oh, you know, it's okay. Like, it's all right. The other shadows are really pretty, and I could create eye looks with that. I mean, I could use Romeo as a blending shadow. I mean, I pretty much really only use these shadows as a matte because that's how they feel. When they swatch very sheer with that glitter to it, but once you put it on the eyes, again, you don't really get that glitter effect. So it just is what it is. So I like most of the shades out of here, but I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more. The other palette, like if I had to just choose like my top palettes that I wanted to purchase from this collection, I would have purchased these 3, and the last one here is Ballad. This is one that I was very interested in because I also have been really gravitating towards these more cool tone shades, these kind of like gray blues. I think that they're very cool, like the slate grays. I was very interested in this palette. It's good, I like it, but I think, you know, going back to the comparisons that I did, the Baroque palette, I feel like I would reach into that one more. It's just a little bit trickier to work with, again, with these two shadows here at the end. The lash shadow I thought was really pretty. It swatched really well. It had a lot of oomph to it, but again, it doesn't always translate to the eyes. I tried to use it on my lower lash line just to be able to get an idea of it, but putting Fate all over and kind of blending it out, that looks pretty, but I feel like a lot of with this collection, I'm like, oh, it's right there, but then it didn't go to the next level. You know, that's kind of how I feel. Like, you're right there, and then we could have elevated it, but it didn't quite happen. So those are the three palettes that I was the most interested in, and out of these three, again, I enjoy Lyric the most, but they're not bad, and for $10, it's like, okay, you know, Natasha Denona is $25, but then the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes, those are only $3, $4, so kind of like in the middle of the range there, and that's how I feel. The other two palettes in the collection, these are the ones that I didn't try on my eyes, but these are, again, if I was only choosing the top palettes for me to purchase, which these were sent to me in PR, I'm pretty sure I said that in the beginning, but I had said in my Will I Buy It video that if they didn't come to me, I was just gonna buy them all. But if I wanted to only buy the ones that really stood out to me, it would have been those three. So I am still planning to use these on my eyes. I think that they're pretty. It's just the color schemes don't call to me as much. But that's kind of my thoughts with this collection. Is I feel like if this was maybe like a newer brand or something and these were the first launch, I would have been like, okay, like very cool. Since it's Colourpop and they're so established, I think I really wanted them to like get to that next level, and with some of the different finishes in there, I wasn't quite as excited as I thought I was going to be. Again, I don't think that this is a bad launch, and I don't think it's a bad collection, and it's going to depend on personal preferences, because a lot of people do like glitters, and a lot of people do like those mattes with the micro glitters in there, and that's great. Just personal preference for me. If it would have been just a matte shimmer and a foil type of palette going on, I probably would have had a blast. The color schemes also, I think some of them are fun. Again, like Ballad, I thought that was a fun one. You know, Lyric and Amore, maybe not the most like unique that you're gonna have in your collection, and you might be able to dupe it out with, you know, other palettes more than I showed you in the comparison. I actually do hope that they keep coming out with the 5-pan palettes, and I hope we get more color stories and more themes. I think that will be a lot of fun because, again, for me personally, I like the mini palettes. I like the $10 price range. I would have thought maybe somewhere like $8 maybe is where I would have placed these at, just in comparison with like their 9-pan palettes usually being in like the $12 or $16 range. But overall, I liked the collection. I just wasn't as hyped as I originally thought that I was going to be. But, you know, definitely let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of the looks and the comparison swatches? Are you planning to grab any of these? Again, they're going to be on sale today. Again, I just want to reiterate, like, I don't think that it's a bad release. I just really felt like it could have gone to the next level, and hopefully with the next collection, if they do release some more of these 5-pans, I hope it's on that next level, because I think that would be pretty awesome. So I hope this video helped you if you were thinking about purchasing some of these palettes. Again, it's a little bit different style of a video. It's taken me the entire day to create this, so I hope that you enjoyed it. I can't even imagine what editing is going to be like, so I hope you enjoyed it or you found it helpful. If you did, please make sure to give this one a thumbs up. I hope you also consider subscribing before you go, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.